Just a final comment that I failed to mention in the body of the shir. I mentioned throughout that one can appoint his wife to light the candle on his behalf. There is another possibility of actual shlichus where we can't justify it based on being part of Bnei Beso and the like. One can simply appoint a shliach. So one advice that many poskim will offer, that if you are traveling, you should appoint a shliach to light the candles in your house. Again, this may create the same problems if you're in different time zones and it's going to be night by your home and day where you are, etc. And those issues we dealt with in this year. But when I talked about appointing a shliach, it doesn't mean specifically your wife. That's the easiest example. But if you're all traveling, so then you do have the possibility of appointing someone outside your family to go into your house and light the candles. Again, dependent on the issues that we raised in the body of the shir. Okay, so believe it or not, which I prefer not to at this point, but we're almost at Chanukah. Right, Georgina and I, when we were trying to figure out what to do pre-Chanukah, because we always have to do something pre-Chanukah, we were trying to think of topics that were out of the box. But the truth is that every year people ask the same questions about Chanukah. So in the end, I'm giving sort of standard topic on traveling on Chanukah, flying on Chanukah. Right, Chachina's giving a more out-of-the-box topic next week, and then it'll be Chanukah, and we'll take a break for Chanukah. So, but the issue of traveling on Chanukah, and we'll get at the end to some unique issues of being on a plane, starts in the Gemara as follows. The Gemara says, the Tanur Rabbanan mitzvahs ner Chanukah ner ishu beso. The mitzvah, the standard mitzvah of Chanukah, is a candle for the person and his house. Now Rashi says, what does ner ishu beso mean? Just ner echad b'chol layla. That means one candle per night. V'ish v'chol b'nei beso sagilu b'ner echad. So what does the word uveso mean? It just means one per household. Then we have mahadran, mina mahadran, and this is just contrasting that. But ner ishu beso simply means a candle for a person and his household and his family. But there are Rishonim and especially Achronim who suggest that perhaps there's more going on here. So in general, there are two types of, more than two, but for our purposes, there are two types of mitzvos that we could define Ner Chanukah as. One is a chovat hagavra, is an obligation which devolves upon individual people. The other is a chovas habayis, a obligation that devolves not on the person, qua person, but on the house. It's really an obligation that every home, every Jewish home, requires a menorah. Now that fundamental question will be, in many ways, the driving force in terms of determining the halachot of a menorah while you are traveling. Because while you're traveling, so now you are separate from your home, and therefore the more the obligation devolves on the individual and separate from his home, the more you have to deal with he may be obligated. The more it's about his home, the more he may be exempt. I mean, that's really the question we have to examine. So the Sfas Emes raises this question in 3, and he says, V'yesh la'ayin. We have to look into this question. Mitzvah ner echad babayis kemo mezuzah kemo ner Shabbos chol shehidlik l'shem Shabbos af shehidlik mi sheyeh dai is the mitzvah of ner Chanukah like mezuzah or ner Shabbos, which is on the house. Right? Mezuzah, once it's up, it's up. The house has the room has a mezuzah on Shabbos. You just need Shabbos candles to be lit. You need there to be light. And therefore, if you had two people living in the same house, you might only need one ner Chanukah. So he already senses the problem with the notion that it's a chovas habayis, that it devolves on the house and not the individual, because we have halacha that a guest is supposed to give a little bit of money to the host so that he will be yotzei in the menorah. Right? But that implies that it's an obligation that devolves on the individual and not on the house and on the home, because the guest who's in somebody else's house, if it's just a chovas habayis, it just devolves on the house and not on the individual people within the house, why should he have to partake? So he said that doesn't disprove this. Maybe that's just because we want the person lechatchila to be involved in the mitzvah monetarily, to contribute to the mitzvah. But maybe, really, he would fulfill his obligation even without participation. Oh, or do we say that no, the mitzvah really is on the individuals? Name adam mitzvah al kol adam. The mitzvah is on the individual person. Elada balabayis motzi kol b'nei beso. And now, if the obligation devolves on each person, so why is the fundamental mitzvah only near ishu beso, one menorah per household? Because you fulfill everyone else's obligation, just like we do with kiddush, just like we do with any other mitzvah. You're able to fulfill other people's obligation. So that's this Fas Emes's question. Do we view Ner Chanukah as a chovas hagavra, as an obligation that devolves on each individual, or do we view it as a chovas habayis? We have sources over here, Michelle. Or an obligation that devolves on the individual, on the home. Bnei Yeshua weighs in number 4, and he says, Nira deman shenishtana mitzvazo mishar mitzvos shein chovas haguf sheyachiv al kol yachid v'yachid dekaima lanami mitzvah bo yosher mi b'shlucho ela deshayni hacha shein hacha ikar ha-mitzvah b'samuch l'shus harabim mishum sumei nisa shum kach edi l'chovas ha-mitzvah zuki l'chovas habayis. He said, in general, we have a principle the Gemara introduces in Kedushin Mem Aleph of mitzvah bo yoser mi b'shlucho, that it's better to do a mitzvah yourself than through a shliach. So he said, if that's the case, why does the Gemara not seem to care whether you light your own menorah? And it's totally fine with only one person per home lighting a menorah. Doesn't that violate mitzvah bo yoser mi b'shlucho, that you're supposed to do a mitzvah yourself? He said, no. Because that is only true if it's a mitzvah, it's a chovas hagavra, a mitzvah that devolves on the individual. But if it's a mitzvah on the home, so what benefit is there for you doing it or someone else doing it? It's accomplished. It's a result-oriented mitzvah. When it's a result-oriented mitzvah, we care less about who does it. And therefore, well, the Sfas Emes has a suffix. He's not sure whether menorah is a person-based chiyuv, a chovas hagavra, or chovas habayis. The Bnei Yeshua leans heavily in the direction that it is a house-oriented mitzvah, and many of the Achronim note that you can be medayik this from the Rambam. And number 5, I'm not 100% convinced by this deal, but this is the deal many Achronim make in the Rambam, who says kama neiros umadlik v'Chanukah, or how many candles you light in Chanukah, mitzvah so sheyeh kol bayis ubayis madlik ner echad, that each home should light a candle. So the Achronim say he means that specifically, that the house is really obligated in the mitzvah, and then he goes on to say mahadrin and mahadrin min a mahadrin. If you look at number 6, so Rav Shirkin in Harei Kedem, which quotes his traditions from Soloveitchik, but here he adds that he added a bit to this at the end. He said Hosavas Hakosev. He writes, "Harei mavur behedya b'lashon Rambam the mitzvahs ner Chanukah the mitzvahs ner Chanukah hichova ketfilin v'sukkah ve'ena kemezuzah she'im ratza Shkon kol yom ba'ol o b'sfina yeshav l'chayiv l'shkon b'bayis o v'nos bayis kedei l'hadlik ner Chanukah." The chovas ner Chanukah chovas hagavra l'chol pratea. Din l'madlik al Pesach meso mibachutz eino din mesuyim b'makom mitzvahs ha'adlaka. So he said the Rav Soloveitchik thought that the Rambam felt the mitzvahs ner Chanukah was an obligation on the individual, and when the Rambam emphasizes that it's in the house, he didn't mean that it was really on the bayis. He meant that it was supposed to be done in a house near the Rosh Hashanah, near the public, in order to be mefarsin the nes, to publicize the miracle. V'tzarach iyun l'mashakazav le'el v'das Rambam v'chorel fi'ol v'divar Rambam v'chos brachos k'shem chayv lachzor al psachim. And he said what would come out from this is that it's distinct from mezuzah, because mezuzah you only have to have a mezuzah if you have a house. My menorah, you need a house, but it's really a person-based obligation. Therefore, you actually have an obligation to have a house such that you can light a menorah. Right? That's how he would sort of square it. זד ללכור לפי עולה מדברי הרמב"ם בהלכות ברכות שחייב לחזור על פסחים בשביל נר חנוכה כמוכן חייב לחזור על פסחים ולקנוז לו bias להדליק לנר חנוכה להיוס achsanai. So Rosh Shirkin, based on Rabbi Soloveitchik, tries to have it both ways and say really Ner Chanukah is a chovas hagavra. It devolves on the person. But if that's the case, why is there so much an emphasis on the home? Because you need a home to properly publicize the miracle, and therefore, since by Ner Chanukah we say you have a mitzvah lechazar al psachim to collect money, right? Even if somebody's poor, to light Ner Chanukah, he suggests that you're even obligated not just to get money to get a menorah, but to get enough money to have a house, right? Or as he said, or be a guest, right? Meaning, be in a house. For Hanukkah, be in somewhere where you could light, because it's a chovas hagavra that requires a bias, right? It's a person-based obligation that requires you to have a house. Now, if the Pnei Yeshua is right, or Rav Shirkin's interpretation here is right, so again, we have, whether you think it's fundamentally a house obligation, or you think it's a individual obligation, which requires you to have a house. If somebody is traveling, then you really have to ask the question. They're not in the house. Now, in Rav Shirkin's formulation, you're really going to have to ask the question, are you allowed to travel if it turns out you can't light? Right? You won't have that if you think it's a chovas habayis. If you think it's a pure chovas habayis like mezuzah, so if it turns out you're traveling and have no home, potentially you have no problem, you don't have to light. According to Rav Shirkin, if you're traveling and that would exempt you from Chanukah, then you shouldn't be traveling. Right, that would be what would come out from Rav Shirkin's position. If you look at number 7, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, I tried. Basically, these sources I cut from somebody's source sheet because I found them and I wanted them on the source sheet, and they actually came out the right place in the source sheet. They have 6 and 7, but I tried to get the number after that to be 8, but I think at some point it just reset. So you have 6 and 7 and 6 and 7 again. Okay, whatever. But on the left-hand side, you have a Tshuva Rav Chaim Kanievsky, and he writes as follows. He says, Im Kain, my kashla tos lam tichnu brichas hara b'mezuzah. So Chanukah has a unique obligation. In addition to the mitzvahs, Chanukah, of hadlaka, if you're not going to light that night, there's a mitzvah haroeh. You can make a bracha on seeing the Chanukah. So he says, why don't we have that by mezuzah? He said the reason seems to be simple. I like Rav Shirkin, he says Ner Chanukah is a mitzvah that each person has to not just have a menorah, has to have a house. And if you don't have the ability to rent or to buy a house, you're still obligated, even if technically you can't fulfill it. And therefore we make you make a bracha at least on seeing it. By mezuzah, if you don't have a house, you have no obligation, and you're totally exempt. If you want, you don't have to live in a house, and then you won't have to put up a mezuzah. Etc. We said Tosfos must not hold this way. Tosfos, in one place, did I put it here or did I not? Because I just was running out of. I did put it here in number 15. Right, Tosfos seems to actually equate them. In which case, Ner Chanukah as well, you don't have to be in a house, you're only obligated in a house. So we have basically 3 conceptions of what the nature of the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is. Either it's a pure chovas hagavra, it just devolves on the individual, or it's a pure chovas habayis, which is the direction that Pnei Yeshua takes, it devolves on the house, or these middle positions suggested by Rav Shirkin or Chaim Kanievsky, that it's fundamentally a person-based chiyuv that requires you to have a house to properly be mefarsim the mitzvah. And this question influences how and when you would be able to fulfill the mitzvah while traveling. So, just to sort of see how these ideas play out, I've given you several sources that, and we'll go through them quickly, that emphasize the general question of Chovas Habayis or Chovas Hagavra. So you look in Shulchan Aruch, number 6. Shulchan Aruch says, Isha madlekes ner Chanukah shafi chayeves ba. A woman can also light the Chanukah menorah. She's also obligated. Aval medlika chirshot v'katan lo asa klum. But if someone who's deaf or not mentally capable or a child would light it, it wouldn't count. Even if it was set up by an adult. And some say that if it's a child who's reached the age of chinuch, he can light it. The Ramah says, nowadays, since we all light, so even a child who reaches chinuch should light. Okay. So the Ber Halacha in 7 says, why is it true that we allow a woman to fulfill her husband's obligation? In general, we frown on a woman fulfilling the obligation of a man, such as by benching and the like. It says, "Ayin Mishnah Berurah Yechol Lotzi Afilu Baila, Aval Yadua Masha Amru Chazal Brachos Davchav Ben Mevarach Lav Isha Mevarach LaBaila Aval Amru Chachamim Tova Meir LaAdam Sheishto Vana Mevarachim Lo." The Gemara says a woman could fulfill her husband's obligation in benching, but if you did that, it's a terrible thing. She said, why is it true that the wife can fulfill the obligation? He said, we're talking about the husband isn't home, and it's no problem. Here it's different because Mishnah Berurah says it's a home-based obligation. It's only a problem. We only talk about who can fulfill a mitzvah for who if it's a person-based obligation. But if it's a home-based obligation, you're not home, why can't your wife do it lechatchila? Right? It's on the house. There's no problem. So the Ber Halacha comes down on that side that it's a home-based obligation, and therefore it is fine. And the Mishnah Berurah notes that there seems to be a stira in Shulchan Aruch in terms of children. Because the Shulchan Aruch brings a Yesh Omrim here that it's fully permitted to have a child who is Magil L'Gil Shel Chinuch light for you. But it's not true in Hilchos Megillah. In Hilchos Megillah, you can't have a child light for you. Why is that true? So, one possibility is to say it's a stira, right, which is what the Mishnah Berurah says in 8. It's since the Shulchan Aruch says you shouldn't have a child, even a Megillah Chinuch, read the Megillah for you, it must be that we should paskin that you also can have a child light menorah for you. And the Magen Avraham in 9, at the end of the line, says "V'dochek lachalik b'zem Megillah ner Chanukah," because there's no reason to distinguish, or there's difficult to distinguish between Megillah and ner Chanukah. But if you look at 10, the Chacham Tzvi says, "No, I have it right." Look at just the answer. He asked this question. He says, "Tshuva Svirleit b'Chanukah kevan de lava karpafta de gavra mutal chiyav adlok echad mikol bnei abayis madlik v'pesach achatzer shuvein shum chiyav al shum echad mikol bnei abayis v'shul shama bracha v'lo adlok v'adifa min." He said, why is it different? Because Chanukah isn't an individual chiyuv; it's a home-based chiyuv. So you can have a child light, because once the child's lit and it's there, even if you didn't see it, it doesn't matter because it's lit. There's the menorah is there, and that's it. But at the end, he says that's not true. But Megillah is an individual-based chiyuv, and therefore each person has to read it, and therefore a child shouldn't do it for you. So you see that the Chacham Tzvi, the Ber Halacha, in the context of the woman lighting for the husband, or the child lighting, even if he's only Higia Lechinuch, the reason that it may be more room to be Mekil is because they side with this notion that it is a home-based chiyuv. In 11, we get the halacha of Achsanai, Shein Madlikin al V'Veso, a guest. If someone's not lighting for him in his home, so tzarach lates pruto leval abayis l'shtativ imam b'shemen shel ner Chanukah. The halacha is if you're a guest, so either you have someone lighting in your own home. If you don't have someone lighting for you at home, so then you have to combine with the menorah of your host. Now, the Achronim debate: are you allowed to, if you want, let's say your wife is lighting for you back home while you're traveling, are you allowed to light in the place where you're staying? And can you make a bracha? So the Taz in 12 summarizes the machlokas, and he says, "B'trumas hadeshen simin kuf aleph kosav achsinai shehu nosui sherotze lahadlik Bivracha chutz leveso, kasev gadol echad derashai lasus kain, afal gav damrin begamara, kin nesiv damina hashta vaday lo tzarech hain lo mechuyav, aval iboy matzi lahadlek, lo vibracha levatava, dava bechal mahadrin. So one gadol said, if you want to light where you are, you're allowed to. That's mahadrin. The gadol echad kasev shahov lo tzarech, patur nikra hedyot. He said, since you don't have to, so if you do, it's foolish, and if you make a bracha, bracha levatala, and it's a bracha levatala if you do. Now this machlokas seems to come down to this as well, right? If you say that it's about the bayit, well, if you have someone lighting for you at home, right, yours is based at some level meaningless, right? You can't call this your mahadrin because you're not in your house. But if you say it devolves on the individual, right? So then you can say, well, just like a normal mahadrin, I light in my home, and everyone lights in my home, so everyone can light whether or not we're in your home. Now this is a bit more complicated because part of this comes down to what extent are you considered part of the home that you're a guest in, right? Which is why this is a bit more complicated, but to know that machlokas exists, and it may, though it may not, fully relate to this question. Okay. If you go to 13, so this is the Gemara that mentions, as I said, that by Chanukah you have the birchas hariyah. So this is where we start to get into the traveling application of this question. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi Rav Hamadlik ner shel Chanukah tzarech levarech. If you light, you have to make a bracha. Virmi Omer haro ner Chanukah tzarech levarech. If you even see the ner Chanukah, you have to make a bracha. So Amar Rav Yehuda Yom Rishon haro mevarach shtayim Hamadlik mevarach shalosh Mikam Eilach Madlik mevarach shtayim V'ro mevarach shalosh. How does it work out? So on the first day, if you light, you make 3 brachos: lahadlik ner shel Chanukah, shas anisim, and shechayanu. Someone who only sees it makes shechayanu and shas anisim, and after that, if there's no shechayanu, so if you light, you make 2 brachos, and if you only see it, so then you just make the bracha of shas anisim. So the question that we Rishonim start to deal with is, what is the case in which one doesn't have a menorah to light? Right? Why would you be in a situation such that you wouldn't be able to light a menorah? What is this case? If you look at Rashi, number 14, he says, "However, b'shuk v'roa be'echad hachatzeres dolik." So one possibility is just walking through the shuk. Umatzadi b'shem Rabbeinu Yitzchak ben Yehuda sham b'shem Rabbeinu Yaakov lo husko bracha zu l'mish shelo hidlek b'veiso adayin. It must be for someone who hasn't lit yet, or liyoshev b'sfina, or someone who's on a boat. So the Achronim start to wonder, well, why? Right, what does this teach you? Why on a boat would you not be able to light? So, there's 2 ways of reading that. Right? One is, you're on a boat. If you didn't bring a menorah with you, right? If you're in the shuk, so fine. So walk into the nearest store and buy a menorah. If you forgot to get a menorah and you're on a boat now, you're stuck. So he's just giving a realistic case. When might you be stuck without a menorah? In which case, you learn nothing about whether you need a house, right? Or you need a structure, which counts as a house, to light menorah. Other Achronim say no. Why did Rashi say Liyoshev Bisfina? Because Rashi holds it's a chovas habayis, which he seems not to actually, right? He seems not to, as we saw earlier, right? But many Achronim are medayik this, and that's why he says if you're on a boat, why in a boat can't you light the menorah? Not because you don't have a menorah with you, but because you can't light a menorah when you're on a boat because you don't have a house, and without a house, you can't. Right, you can't light the menorah if it's a birchas, if it's a mitzvahs habayit.
What if you live on a boat?
Right, so that's what the Achronim, as we'll see, the Achronim will say, 1, do you need a house? And 2, what counts as a house, right? If you think it's a house. But this is where it starts, really. Is this Rashi, and how are you medayik? And we'll see in just a minute. So,
we talk all the time in Halacha about Ruach Mitzvah Bayam, Ruach Mitzvah Yabasha. I mean, most likely you can't light a menorah on a boat because...
Or that, right, or it's going to blow out, or whatever the case is. Meaning, you can take any practical approach, in which case it doesn't teach you anything, or you can say, no, fundamentally you need a house. The Tosas I gave you here Right? He says, this is where he says it's a mitzvah habayis. But shar mitzvahs going lulav v'sukkah lo tekinu levarach l'roa ele gaben archam mishum chavivas haneis v'gam mishum sheish kam v'nei adam she'ein lahem batim. So Tosfos has two reasons why there's a birchas haroa. One is it's a really, really special mitzvah, and two, it's because some people don't have houses. V'ein biyadam l'kayim mitzvah, and therefore they can't perform the mitzvah. So Tosfos at least says black on white that it is a chovas habayis. You need a house. So why is it that there's a birchas haroa? Right, so Rashi may not say it. Tosfos clearly does say it. Right, Tosfos clearly does claim, at least in his second, right, it's unclear when he says v'gam. Right, are those two different answers, or both of them true? But then he backs off of that and says v'tam rishon nicha. Right, it's two answers, and I don't like the second answer. Right, the lo tikshile mezuzah, because then you should ask why you don't have it by mezuzah. But the truth is that he still seems to hold, right, he only seems to back off on why you would need a birchas haroa here. Right, but he still equates it with mezuzah. He just says if it was true that every time you had a mitzvah habayit, you had a birchas haroa, so mezuzah would also have it. But he seems not to back off the answer that Chanukah is a mitzvah habayit. So Rashi, it's open. What you learn from his line by Yoshev B'Sfina. Tosfos seems to clearly hold that Chanukah is a mitzvah habayis, and therefore if you're traveling and you're in a non-house, so then you are exempt. You can't be mekayim the mitzvah. However, that's not agreed upon by all Rishonim. So if you look at 16, the Beis Yosef quotes from the Maria Buav, Belashon Hazev Kaz Baruch Chaim. The Beis Yosef quoting Marabuav, quoting the Baruch Chaim. Shemi shehalach lekfar she'ein bo Yisrael belansham beleil Chanukah aval b'she'ein lo bayis miyuchod shamanu shab meshum hayanod lahadlik levarach zechla neis. He said that if you're in a city, you don't have a house, fine, not a problem, right? You could just light. At least have not a bayit miyuchad. But then he takes it farther and he says, Od l'sham. Furthermore, he writes that mishabah b'sfina. Ojveis goyim madlik b'vrachos. If you're on a boat, light. Assuming you can solve Ellie's problems with the wind and whatever. If you can't, you're on a cruise ship, right? Fine, you're on a cruise ship. I assume they had some version of that. It probably wasn't as nice, but they had some, right? You can have a structure around it. You don't have to have an open boat. So you see explicitly in the Orchos Chaim that you can light in a boat, making it clear you don't need you don't need a home. Okay. But many Achronim were medayek from Tosfos and from Rashi that maybe you do need a home, and otherwise, because it's either chovas habayis or the way the Rav Shurkin and Rav Chaim Kanievsky say it's a chovas hagavra which requires a bayit, one or the other. They said if you're traveling, you don't have a home, so then you can't be mekayim the mitzvah. If you look in 17, I gave you, just because he's not in Bar Ilan, I gave you a quote from the Daf al Adaf, but from Sviv Pesach Frank and Mekray Kodesh, he writes, he's medayik from Rashi, and you just look at the second line, he says, Mefurish b'Rashi, she'eman lika neres Chanukah b'svina, v'chora tam, mishum she'b'neres Chanukah tzarech bayit, v'ein svina chashuva kebayit l'inyan zeh. It must be, you need a house, right? Either because it's a chovas habayis, or because it's a chovas gavra, which requires you to have a house to properly be mefarsem the nes. And if you don't have a house, you're on a boat, so then you're not obligated. Moshe Feinstein as well, 18, paskins this way. Min she'ein lo bayis klal v'yashin b'chutz. If you don't have a house at all, you sleep outside, kigon shenimtza b'midbar, v'gam k'she'irish lo haya b'veso v'yeh b'derech kol halayla, or you're going to be traveling all night, v'ein lo mi sheyadlik b'veso, and you have nobody to light for you at home, mashme me Rashi, so it implies from Rashi that we just saw, that he quotes the whole thing. We'll go down to the last line of this paragraph. He makes it sound like it's not. He said you could have said it's because you don't have candles, but he said it doesn't sound that way. It sounds like it's an objective statement. It sounds like even if you do have candles, you have no obligation at all. No bias. And if you have a house, the obligation is in your house. So he said, why is it that when you're traveling normally, your wife can light for you in the house? Because as long as someone's in your house, so then, right, that's enough to say you have a house, because someone's in your house, you can light. But let's say you're all on the plane together, so then you have no house for the night, you're on the plane. So therefore, there's no chiyuv at all. Lo yik sham, right? Lo yusham leka chiyuv alei mitzad habayit kevan should lo yaduru sham. There's no obligation at all, and then he goes on to say there's no chshad, because as long as you're not walking in and out, everyone will assume you're just traveling, and therefore, Rav Moshe says, it's a chovas habayis, so why does the Gemara even bother to tell you that your wife should fulfill your obligation? Because if anybody's living at home, so you have to because at least somebody's in the home, and that generates an obligation, but if you're all traveling together, so you have no obligation at all, because for that night, nobody in your family has a home, and therefore there is no obligation at all.
But you still can?
No, be brachal vatala, right? Brachal vatala, right? You don't have a bayit.
Okay.
Now, there's two ways to respond. Well, yeah, there's two ways to respond to Moshe's claim. One is to deny his claim that Chanukah is a chovas habayis at all, and just say, no, it's a chovas hagavra, it devolves on the individual. The second is to say, Moshe is right in principle, but expand what it means to have a home. Right? Those are your two, right? Your two ways of going about it. So if you look, the first person to deal with this shaila, this is anachronistic, but the first person to really deal with this shaila is the Marsham. Right? So the Marsham, writing, I forget exactly when he lives, but he lives when trains first become a thing. So it's like, for exact, Chuvets in the 19th century, I believe. Marsham writes, he was asked about lighting a Chanukah candle when you're on a train. Can you light a Chanukah candle when you're on an overnight train? So he says, "L'tshuvas michtavo b'yom sheni de Chanukah imut lo lahadlik ner Chanukah al harakevet, right, al a bone. Lo matzadi adav mervuar, aval lo misha shilem ba'ad kol halayla have kesacha lo beis dira lecho v'lishon sham v'chayev b'ner Chanukah." Vayin v'rashi b'svina shlomer sheu az svina psuchos b'lo kirui v'aruach menashev v'lohaya begeder bayis klal. So he combines Rav Moshe with Eli. Right? He says, yes, you need a house, but B, we can be expansive in what we define as a house. Why is a boat not a house? He said a boat could be a house if it has a roof. Right? The one thing you need in order for something to be considered a house is a roof. And therefore a train has a roof, and therefore you have an overnight train, light on the train, no problem. So he accepts the argument that Neiros Chanukah is a chovas ha-bayis, but he expands bayit such that someone who's traveling would be chayev. And he says, and even though even though the train is moving, right, you're not in one place, he said, who said you need a set train? Right, set home. You have a home. Who cares if it's on wheels? Big deal. And therefore, he says you are obligated. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach.
And he might be even throwing in like a little, like you might get more pursuit when he said it this way, right?
Right, exactly. Right, it says, right, and he says, great, right? For pursuing Nisa, you'll get pursuing Nisa. Everyone on the train, everyone you're passing, who knows? It'll be wonderful. Okay. Now, Shlomo Zalman says, based on this, so the same thing should apply to a plane. And a plane, right, mamanav shach. Either you think it devolves on the individual, and even if it doesn't evolve on the individual, it devolves on your home. And why is a plane different than a train? And that's Shlomo Zalman's argument. Now, I saw quoted from Rabbi Yashiv that maybe he was mesupik about this, because he said maybe a plane is more of an ol zarok, because it's in the air, so it's less kavua than a train. I don't know. I'm not sure, right? I don't know. The Aruch HaShulchan weighed in the train issue as well. And he says, "V'nir lefinez daiti da'ata shrovin esizmin v'silas habarzel v'kasher lahadlik sham ka'edua yachol lismoch b'pshitos al beso shemadlikin sham." He said, well, if you're on a train, it's really hard to light, so you really should just rely on your wife. Right? That's really what you should do. That's his advice. Good advice. Omnam halolo yira neras Chanukah, but you won't see neras Chanukah. L'chiv tov she'adlik ner echad ba'agala sheyoshiv sham. Therefore, he says, you know what? Light one candle. Right, meaning for the full mitzvah, rely on your wife. But you want to try to see the menorah. Right? There is a value to seeing it, so light one. Because no one will, it won't bother you. This is not true anymore. Then it was true. We'll see. At the end, I gave you a big don't do this from, there's a list of poskim who say, I didn't think this was a real thing to entertain. You say, oh, of course you're obligated on a plane. You should just light a menorah. And then they say, well, you shouldn't blow it out yourself, but you should tell the stewardess that they want to blow it out, they can, right? No, it's a bad idea. Don't do such a thing. Whatever. Aruch HaShulchan's writing in a different time, and he says, one candle, no one's going to bother you, which is probably true, right? When everyone was smoking on the trains, and it wasn't no smoking zones. So what's different? You have one candle, you have one cigarette, right? No one cares. We said no one's going to care, so fine. The kol sheken shein lo bayis mechuyev medina lahadlik shamim lo yavabo so laila bezo makom. And he said, why is this true? Why does he encourage you to do this? And he says, especially if you don't have anybody at home, light. Why? Because it's a chovas hagavra. It's not a chovas habayis. So you're obligated even though you have no home, right? So there's two reasons why you might think that somebody who's traveling with nobody at home should have to light. One is it's a chovas hagavra, the Aruch HaShulchan. Two is maybe it's a chovas habayis, but the train or plane is a bayit, right? That's one or the other. Now, some want to say, well, maybe the Marsham would only say a train because you can sleep, you can lie down on a plane. You're all stuffed. You're not living. It's very much more temporary. Others say what? First class. First class. You have to be diet, right? First class, or those the super first class, right? In the Asia flights, like the $24,000 a flight room with whatever. That's a whole different madrega.
You have that on trains too.
Right, you can trains. At least there's more room to begin with. So I don't know if it's $24,000 for one. I think that's what it is, right? To these Chinese flights. I remember seeing an article once, right? Like it's those. I don't know.
For some of the Nisa, would be hard from there.
No one's allowed in, right? Well, I guess
that's if you fly by another plane.
No.
Well, that's not true. You have they give you wait staff, right? You have 5 people. Come in. I need you to see my menorah, right? Okay, whatever. You can use. Anyways, Tzitz Eliezer comes down hard on the Chovas HaGavra side, and therefore in 21 he says. Bnei Adam hayotzim letiyul b'mechanaka v'lonim ba'oel. All pnei asad chayavim b'adlakas ner Chanukah. If someone's going on a trip, going camping on Chanukah, this tshuva obviously is written in Eretz Yisrael, right? This doesn't happen, and no one goes camping. I hope no one goes camping, right? December in Canada, fine. But he says you're going and you're camping out, or soldiers. Right, soldiers. Right, nishalti be'elu hayotzim letiyul b'Chanukah chayavim lahadlik ner Chanukah v'racha gam k'shem yishenim tachas kipei hashamayim. Right, you don't have a house at all. You're sleeping in the open sky. Im al kol panim yadliku b'lo bracha madin l'gam yishenim ba'oel. V'im adif shekol echad yitzim adlakas aner shevivesa b'mida v'yeshnam she'yadliku lav. Should you rather fulfill your obligation whether it's at home? He says, "Daiti near lahazbek kamanas abachi gazos kichiv adlakas ner Chanukah chiv mutala karpafta de gavra bli shekur kasher becheft." He said the mitzvah of ner Chanukah is on the individual. V'shona hi mitzvah zot b'zegam mitzvah zezuzah. It's different from mezuzah, etc., etc. Right, and then he says, if you look at the next page, Al pi amur muvan the daiti nobin shelatin shemiyuchavim lahadlik ner Chanukah gam kishenim tachas kipei hatipas hashamayim. And therefore, I think you're fully obligated wherever you are. So if you want to light outside, so light outside. Right, and said for sure if you're in kol shekem shchayim lahadlik rachak shem yishem be'ol matuach, and for sure if you have a tent. Said it's fundamentally a chovas hagavra, and if you have a tent, matova manayim, so you have a place to light it. And then he quotes the positions and then he quotes the position of the Aruch HaShulchan. I'll just summarize what he says. He quotes the position of the Aruch HaShulchan. He said, you see, the Aruch HaShulchan thought it was obvious that the reason you're obligated when you're traveling on a train is not because the train's your home, because he says it's an individual obligation. He paskins like the Aruch HaShulchan. And therefore, he says, for sure, if you're going camping, you're traveling, whatever you're doing, you are chayev to light. In the end, he says, after the ellipsis, he said, don't prove anything from Rashi. Why does Rashi say that you aren't lighting on the boat? He said, that's because, you don't have candles, and you're on a boat. Where are you going to find candles? You're on a boat. Don't be medayik anything from this. He's not telling you anything fundamental. And then he proves it from the Orchos Chaim. Right at the end, that's the Orchos Chaim that we saw quoted before by the Mari Abuav. And therefore, all the way at the end, he says, and therefore, in conclusion, I said, I think you're obligated, even when you're sleeping outside. For sure, if you're in a tent, below kiroi, shechayav lahadlik, afilu behekef mechitzas, below kiroi. I don't care. You have a roof, you don't have a roof, you have walls, doesn't matter. Lazim aneres ba'ashashes, shaver ruach v'chava. The only thing you have to worry about is make sure that it won't go out. Uvinyan ha'adlaka, b'makom shemnashiv haruach, yoin mashikazav b'shur elf, l'chashlomo, etc. Gelagam levarach. So therefore, I think you light with a bracha. For sure, says, and he says at the end, Kizeu ikra mitzvah v'rsuma. That is the mitzvah. Liros ner Chanukah dolekes u'gediver erech hasholchan shematzanu smuchim lo b'div chos chaim lavar milunel zal vanir lefias daiti kasafti. Right. So if you summarize what we have so far, right, the fundamental question they ask by Sukkah, by Menorah, is it a chovas gavra or chovas habayis or somewhere in the middle? Right? Does it involve on the individual, on the home, or on the individual, but only if he has a home? So for our purposes, we saw a few nafkaminas to that question, such as, why is it that here it's perfectly okay for your wife to be motzi, or the child to be motzi? Right? That may be because it's a chovas habayis, and therefore it's in the same standards. But for our purposes, we're focusing on the travel. So, if you're traveling, are you chayev? One, are you able to? Two, light a menorah. So we saw already that if you take the middle position, that it's a chovas hagavra, that you need a bayit. So if you end up concluding that a train or a plane or whatever is not a bayit, so really what should come out is, well, either make sure someone's at home to light for you, right? But if you can't, then you shouldn't be traveling, right? You shouldn't all be traveling at night. But if you take the other two obligations, you take the other two positions, if you say it's a chovas hagavra, so wherever you are, you have to light. If you say it's a chovas habayit, not a chova of the person that he has to find a bayit, but purely a chova habayit, so then you have to ask the next question. Is what you're traveling in considered a bayit? If it is, then you have to light where you are, and if it's not, then you don't have to light. So Moshe Feinstein rules it's a chovat habayit. Now he doesn't weigh in on travel, and that he just says it's a chovat habayit. Tzitz Eliezer says no, it's a chovas gavra, and therefore wherever you are, traveling, camping, doesn't matter, you're always liable. The Marsham says, no, it is a chovat habayit. It's an obligation in the house, but we're expansive in how we understand your home. And therefore, a train counts as your home. And Rosh Zalman says that's the same thing of a plane. A plane is also your home. We'll get to what he says to do, Lamaisa, of how to light. Now, I mentioned before, the question you have to ask is, okay, well, is a plane exactly like a train? Now, Rosh Zalman assumed it was, but it's not 100% clear. So if I gave you in 22 a summary from Eitan Shnal, similar to some of these sources are hard to find. And I mean, they're not on Bar Ilan, so if I can only put X number of things that I have to cut and paste, or retype, because they just take up space. So I just gave you a summary. It says, likewise, purchasing a ticket for overnight air travel may be tantamount to renting a temporary dwelling, where all opinions would agree that one is obligated to light Chanukah candles. Now, obviously, lighting a Chanukah candle on a commercial flight is dangerous and illegal. I don't know why I have to even state that, but except for the fact that people disagree with what I just said. Fine. Fine.
How did you get on?
What? Yeah, right? I know. You managed to smuggle on the lighter and then you light it, right? No, bad idea. Really bad idea. We'll see. Rosh Zalman has a different suggestion. So, Rosh Zalman Orbach would instruct individuals in such a situation to light battery-operated incandescent flashlights without making a bracha. And we're going to come back to why that's okay in a minute, relying on the opinions that accept electric bulbs for use as Chanukah candles. In addition, the traveler would be instructed to appoint an angel to light on his behalf at the traveler's home. However, some authorities question the comparison of air travel to the discussion of railway travel. Today's flights of several hours contrast starkly with the long-distance train travel of earlier generations that could span several days or more. Right. So this he quotes from the Shut V'Dibarta Bam and from the Nitzvah's Ner Yishuveso. And he said, therefore, a plane ticket may not constitute the rental of a temporary dwelling place. As a result, based on the above discussion, overnight travel may actually circumvent one's obligation in the mitzvah of lighting Chanukah candles altogether or make proper fulfillment of the mitzvah impossible. Therefore, poskim recommend avoiding such situations when not absolutely necessary. So, what you have is, when you get to the plane, so then again, You have some, like the Aruch HaShulchan will tell you, it's a chovas hagavra. Therefore, you're obligated to light. If you're obligated to light and you have no way of lighting, so you should try to avoid traveling if at all possible. If it's a chovas habayit, so you could argue, well, either traveling in a plane is a house, in which case you should light, or right, it's a chovas hagavra that requires you to have a house, in which case you really shouldn't get on that plane if you don't have somebody lighting for you at home. Let's say you don't have anybody at home, and you assume that you're obligated to light in the plane, either because it's a chovas hagavra, or you count this as a bayit, which may or may not be true, depending on whether you think a few-hour flight or a flight in general is similar to, let's say, the train of the Maharsham. So, what options do you have? So, Rav Shlomo Zalman suggested that what you should do is to light a battery-operated incandescent light bulb as a menorah. Now, why that? So, lichatchila, the best way to obviously to do this, at least what you should have is what the Mishnah Berurah notes. First things first, if you can, and you're on the plane, so kimidina kishto madlekes nerchanaka veso yotze de chavaso bad lakasa afshum bakam rachum veso veinsarach shuv leshtate afilo bepriti. He said first things first, the Mishnah Berurah notes is if you're away, so what you should do lichatchila is have your wife light for you, right? If you want, because that for sure fulfills your obligation, right? Once you do that. If you can't do that, so then Shlomo Zalman suggests the electric light bulb. Now, there are two questions we still have to deal with. One is why, right? Why would that work, or why shouldn't that work? That's question one. The second question, and this is something I haven't dealt with yet, so hopefully, now in our last 12 minutes, this is the most complicated part of the shir, right, is the following shayla. As is clear from the Mishnah Berurah, the easiest way is simply to have your wife light. Because then after that, everything else is just lechatchila, so you can see a menorah. So fine, you want to light a flashlight, do whatever you want. Here's the problem. Let's say you are traveling on a plane, and your wife, it's going to be night for her, but it's going to be day for you. So then, does that obviate the possibility that she'll light for you? Right? Because lechatchila, you just say, the best way when you're traveling is just have your wife light for you. That's great if you're traveling north-south, but what if you're traveling east-west, and you're going to be in different time zones, and therefore, when it's time to light Hanukkah candles, you are going to be b'shas p'tur, it'll be day, and your wife will be b'shas chiyuv. So then, it may be that you can't rely on your wife. So who is the first person to ask this shayla? So, apparently it's hashgacha pratis. This is the second time this has happened to me, but as far as I can tell, the first person to ask the shayla was Rabbi Felder. Right? Rabbi Felder asked the shayla, though I can't find his writings that he ever asked it, but he asked it to the Minchas Yitzchak in 24. What was the halacha? Now, I emailed Rabbi Felder, current Rabbi Felder, not Zatzal, but current Rabbi Felder, what he paskins, and where his father wrote about it, but I didn't manage to get a response in advance, so if you see him, you can ask him. I don't know. But look at the Minchas Yitzchak in 24, he said, okay, Mishad lik ner Chanukah bevesa b'makom shadayin yom hayim yotze medina. V'chidam yichagav no lin ner Chanukah. What do you do? Is it what?
Shabbos?
Lin ner Shabbos. Sorry, and same for Shabbos. Okay. It says, okay, b'siyata d'shayim Yerushalayim yer kodesh kivanev v'sikonein yom hey breishas tafshin lamates. Fine. So he writes this al kvod harav hagon hamafursam v'chulei. Moreno Hagon, Felder Shlita, Toronto. Okay, so Felder was the first one who came up with the shayla in writing that I know of, anyways. And he wrote to Minchas Yitzchak, Rav Weiss, and he says, "What's the halacha? Right? Does this throw everything into chaos? Because what we've seen is, according to everybody, either you're not chayiv at all while you're on the plane, right, or you are chayiv, and therefore you shouldn't get on the plane. But everyone agrees that if you have your wife lighting for you, so then you could solve the problem." But Rav Felder asked Minchas Yitzchak, what happens if when your wife lights, it's going to be daytime for you, because you're already past night, and that ruins everything, right? So what do you do? So Minchas Yitzchak wrote as follows. He said, "Hinekvo taraso hevi midibes fasemes mistabek ima mitzvah alabayis." So what did Rav Felder think? Rav Felder said, well, wait a second. Is it on the house or is it on the person? If it's on the house, so then it may not matter where you are. It's wherever your home is. Right? If your home, it's night by your home, so you're You're chayiv not to light when it's night for you. You're chayiv that a menorah should be lit when it's night at your home. So if he said, if it's a chovas ha-gavra, so it matters where you are. If it's a chovas ha-bayis, it matters where your home is. So he says, v'hadush, so he said, v'hadush be the mishad of prina and laws, the mitzvah mamono v'dina yotze, after havu, balei abai b'vayzecha, shtei balei b'shevezecha, v'lagas balei etc. Right? Ad kam tochad dvarav. Right, skip to the next paragraph. He said, Rav Felder had suggested to Minchas Yitzchak, this depends on this question. If it's a chovas ha-gavra, so then it matters where you are. If it's a chovas ha-bayis, it matters where your home is. So after the ellipse, he says, also that which you said, said, here's the problem. The biggest problem is not just if it's a chiyuv ha-gavra, but it's a chiyuv ha-gavra, there's a rule that if anything you can't do, you can't appoint a shliach to do. So Rav Felder said to him, if it's a chovas ha-gavra, it matters where you are, and that obviates the possibility of you appointing your wife, because since you can't light during the day, you can't have your wife light, even though it's night for her, you can't have it light for you, because you can't light now, halachically, so if you can't light, you can't appoint somebody else either. Right? So don't try to tell me it's a chiyuv ha-gavra that you could appoint your wife, it won't work. So he said, he said, the truth is you don't even need that. Because you have a bigger problem. That at the moment when you're obligated, no one's lighting for you. And when your wife lights for you, you're no longer obligated because it's a day, right? This is a more fundamental problem. It's not just a shlichus problem. It's a real, right? It's a much more fundamental problem is, if it's a chovas ha-gavra, so you have to light when it's night for you. The fact that your wife lights for you when it's night for her doesn't help the fact that while it was night for you, you didn't light anywhere. And when your wife lights for you, it's day. Right? It's not even a shlichus problem. It's a more fundamental problem. At the time when you're obligated, there's nothing going on. But he notes that we can, and he goes through a whole deal, and that maybe this is a machlokes between the Bach and the Mogen Avram. So when we go to the 4 line from the bottom of this, I don't want to get into this whole analysis. Is so he said, you know what, I think it should be obvious that you can fulfill your obligation, because it's true, the time zone question is new. But he said, theoretically, right, if you're lighting at Shkia, let's say, or at Seis, so you would come into the same problem even if you were 50 miles from your wife. Right? Forget, right, the modern shaila that you're you're 10 time zones away. That's a modern shaila. But Minchas Yitzchak said, wait a second, no one ever raised the shaila in past years. What happens if you traveled 50 miles, right, which was totally reasonable. Right, 50 miles, right, even if you're lighting at Seis, right, or let's say, make it easy, right, she's lighting at Plag, right, for whatever reason, right, so you can't even light B'di'evet, right, or she's lighting at Seis, but she's only putting enough oil for half an hour, and you're just far away enough that, that the sun sets. No, he said, no one ever asked the Shaila, can you be Yotze with your wife when you're half an hour away, right, half an hour, right, enough away that it's a half-hour time difference, right? Not time zones, just right sun setting different times, and therefore he said you should say that it's fine. And he says, "Ukvar kasavti besifri leinian hasheila besfir shevenekim bisha shetchilas for shevenekim bartzas abriz v'nasal Yisrael v'usham b'yom hashvilas sirasam nochal litval miyad b'layla shechshel sheishes yamim miyom shalem." And he said, and besides, I've already said in other context that let's say someone is counting nida, she's nida, and she has to count her days, and she travels and cuts off 6 hours, 7 hours by traveling in time zones. Right? I've already said it doesn't matter because we go by days. We don't go by exactly how many hours. So he said, I would have said that the same thing is true here. But then he backs off and he says, nah, maybe it's different. He said, why? Because Nida is by days. Right? The halacha is days. How many days did you have? And if you traveled, so still the sun rose and the sun set. it was a day. But menorah is Peshtumei Nisa. You are chayiv at night to be mafarsim the nes. If it's not night for you, maybe you can't be mafarsim the nes. And therefore, because of his suffix, he's really not sure. He says at the end, L'chein l'maisa yish l'chavin shalolot says ba'adlakas ishto. Because of his suffix, he says, L'chatchila, you should not do it. Right? If you're in a different time zone, then you can't. Now, if you're in a different time zone, I mean, you're on the plane, so now Minchas Yitzchak has gotten rid of our best way of lighting, which is have your wife light for you. On the other hand, Shlomo Zalman says it's not true. Shlomo Zalman says it's totally fine. Right, Nasa in 25, Nasa echav minei habayis l'medina acheres yotzi cholvaso b'hadlaka shemadlikin beveso afal b'shemakom shehuso ein atas man hadlaka klal. He says no problem whatsoever. He paskins like the other shita the Minchas Yitzchak had raised. Okay, so let me summarize everything we've seen, and then I will briefly summarize the question of the electric menorah. So, is menorah chovas habayis, chovas hagavra, or a chov, an obligation on the person to have a bayit? If it's a chovas gavra, so wherever you are, you always have to light. If it's a chovas bayis, so you don't have to. If it's a chova on the gavra to have a bayit, so you shouldn't put yourself in a situation where you're not going to be able to light. So what happens if the person is traveling? So first you have to ask the question, which of these is it? And even if you think it's a chovas bayit, do you have a bayit? So on the train, all the poskim agreed you're chayev, because either it's a chovas gavra, or the train counts as a house. If you are camping, so Moshe Feinstein says, Chovas Habayit, you are exempt, or therefore you shouldn't be in that situation. The Tzitz Eliezer says, no, it's a Chovas Gavra, you're obligated.
What if you're in someone else's home?
So if you're in someone else's home, so the halacha is L'chatchil Mishtati for Pruta, right? You give them the money, right? That's, again, either, now, as we saw, the Acharon debate, what happens if your wife is lighting for you also? Do you even have to do that? Machlokes, is a part of Mahadran, not part of Mahadran.
What if your wife is with him in the home?
So then for sure you're Mishtati V'Pruta. If no one at home to light, you can light yourself, right? Or be Mishtati V'Pruta. It's a bit of a discussion which is better, but I don't know under what circumstances, but Mishtati V'Pruta is the standard. We saw the late Achronim debate. Shlomo Zalman assumes that whatever is true on a train is true on a plane. Some Achronim debate that and say, no, a plane is actually pachoda bayit, and therefore if you need a house, you can't light on the plane. So what do you do when you're on a plane? So obviously the easiest solution is just have your wife light, right? As long as your wife is home. But let's say either you're all traveling together, so there's nobody at home, or, second question, what happens if you're going to be in a different time zone? So according to Shlomo Zalman, it doesn't matter, right? Maybe because for whatever reason it doesn't matter. But let's say you're passing a Minchas Yitzchak, that if you're traveling, you're in a different time zone, and it's day versus night, so then you can't do it. So then you're stuck. So what's your last-ditch solution? You have nobody at home, and you're stuck on the plane, and you can't have your wife light for you because you're traveling.
But even if it's Gavra, and you're on the plane, then having your wife at home doesn't solve the problem.
Correct, but we say but we say it's enough, right? I mean, that already the Gemara says. You could have your wife light for you, right? But get her shlichus. Right? Now, if you think it's a chovas habayit, it's not really shlichus at all. It's just the house needs one. But even if it's a chovas gavra, so we say you can be yotzei through shlichus. Why shlichus here is a bit different? But in general, right, you're allowed to have a shliach. And any chovas gavra, you can have a shliach. Now, it's true. Some of the later achronim say, well, why can you do that? Normally you can't by chovas haguf. It's true. But this may be a chovas gavra, not a chovas haguf, and that distinction is way too, because it's a chovas, it might be a chov on the individual, but not like on the body. It's not like tefillin. It's you have to have it done, right? So then you can have shlichus, so that would be fine. So why did Shlomo Zalman say the incandescent light bulb? So that comes down to two big shilas, right? One is electricity fire, right? Which is a big, right? Especially incandescent light bulbs. So many poskim felt that incandescent light bulbs are fire. So if you think it's not fire, so you can't light it at all, it won't count. If you think it is fire, so then you can light it. But the Achronim note a few other reasons why, even if it is fire, it might not help. What is, you see it through the bulb, right? So you don't see the fire itself. It's, right? Other Achronim say, who cares, right? You see it through a window, doesn't matter. Possibility 2 is that you need a menorah which is domet to the one in the mikdash. And this might not be, right? Which is part of the machlokes of wax versus oil. In general, we pass. You don't need it to be doma. Fine. So the third problem, and this is why Rosh Zalman wasn't bothered by all of those. What he was bothered by was that he felt it had to be similar enough to a candle. And he said, what's the fundamental definition of a candle? That it has a finite amount of energy. But a plugged-in electric light, he said, is infinite, right? Because it'll just keep going forever, which is not really true. The filament will burn out. But that's, right, he said in terms of an electric source, right? It's that you can't do. You need a candle, not a tank, right? Not an endless tank, right? You need a candle. And therefore, Shlomo Zalman said, I'm willing to say that it's fire. I'm willing to reject Dome Mikdash and all that. But I need it to be a flashlight and not a plugged-in one, because I need it to be a finite source. And therefore, your last possibility is, if you're traveling and your wife isn't at home, or you're all traveling, or you possibly Minchas Yitzchak, so then Shlomo Zalman says you can light with a flashlight. Rovadia says you can do that b'di'evet, but do without a bracha, because all the sveikot which you definitely shouldn't do, right? You can ask your shilas about which one of these are in line. The one thing you shouldn't do is what I gave you in 28, is the achronim who say, yeah, just light the fire on the plane. That, right? As much as there's a logic to it, bad idea, don't do it. That much I'm willing to paskin on. All the other ones, ask your local posek. That one I'm willing to tell you is definitely a terrible idea. Just a final comment that I failed to mention in the body of the shir. I mentioned throughout that one can appoint his wife to light the candle on his behalf. There is another possibility of actual shlichus, where we can't justify it based on being part of B'nai Beso and the like. One can simply appoint a shliach. So one advice that many poskim will offer, that if you are traveling, you should appoint a shliach to light the candles in your house. Again, this may create the same problems if you're in different time zones and it's going to be night by your home and day where you are, etc. And those issues we dealt with in this year. But when I talked about appointing a shliach, it doesn't mean specifically your wife. That's the easiest example. But if you're all traveling, so then you do have the possibility of appointing someone outside your family to go into your house and light the candles. Again, dependent on the issues that we raised in the body of the shir.